I was driving alone that night, late as hell, like 2 in the morning, on one of those deserted roads that seem to lead to nowhere. You know, the kind of place where the city lights disappear and all you've got is your car's headlights and your own breathing. The radio wasn't picking up anything but static, and I was tired as hell, almost dozing off. It was the third time I'd made that trip from Chicago to the small shithole town where my ex-girlfriend, Sarah, lived. And each time, it felt like the drive got longer and emptier. That's when I saw the guy walking alone on the shoulder. He looked ordinary enough, worn-out clothes, an old backpack slung over his shoulder. He seemed like one of those guys who had nothing left, you know? And like the idiot I am, I figured there was no harm in giving him a ride. It was late as hell, after all, and the guy looked like he was down on his luck. I pulled over slowly and rolled down the window, calling out to the guy, asking if he needed a ride. He walked up to the passenger door, threw his backpack in the back seat, and got in, like it was the most normal thing in the world. He didn't seem threatening or anything, so without thinking too much, I hit the gas and got back on the road. The silence in the car was kind of uncomfortable, so I tried to break the ice with some small talk. I asked where he was headed, and he casually mentioned that he had just gotten out of prison. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't want to look like a scared idiot, so I kept driving, trying not to think too much about what he had just said. He started talking more, like he needed to vent, said he'd been locked up for 5 years and had just gotten out the night before. He was trying to scrape together some cash to pay off a debt, and that's when things got serious. Out of nowhere, he pulled a knife out of his jacket, a small blade, but sharp as hell. My heart was racing, but I tried to keep my cool. He made it clear that he needed my help to get the money and that we were going to do it right now. My mind was racing. How the hell did I get myself into this mess? I tried to talk him out of it, but he was determined. He didn't seem eager to hurt anyone, but he wasn't going to hesitate if he had to. He told me to keep driving, and I did, not knowing how to get out of that situation. He directed me to a convenience store on the side of the road, one of those 24-hour places that never have anyone around. When we got there, he laid out the plan coldly and calmly. I was going to go in, grab the money from the register, and get out quickly. If the clerk resisted, he'd take care of it. I had no choice. I walked into the store trying to act normal, like I was just another customer. I grabbed a few snacks from the shelf and went up to the register. The clerk, a young guy who looked exhausted, started ringing up the items. I quietly told him what I needed, not wanting to raise any alarms, but he sensed the seriousness of the situation when he saw my tense face and the guy outside with the knife. The clerk, visibly shaken, opened the register and put the money in a bag. I took the cash and got out of there as fast as I could, my hands trembling and my heart pounding. We got back into the car in silence, and I was sweating bullets, adrenaline pumping through my veins. The guy was completely calm, like nothing had happened. He told me to drive to the next town, where he finally got out of the car and disappeared into the darkness, leaving me with nothing but the sound of crickets and the cold night wind. I sat there, in the car, trying to process what had just happened. My heart was still racing, and I didn't know if I should go straight to the police or just forget that night ever happened.
I had just moved to a quiet little neighborhood in the suburbs, the kind of place that looks like it was lifted straight from a postcard. You know the type: well-kept lawns, friendly neighbors who wave at you from across the street, and that eerie sense of perfection that makes you wonder if something's not right. It was exactly what I needed after the chaos of the city. A fresh start, away from the madness. The first few weeks were calm. I got to know some neighbors, settled into my new routine, and started to unwind. But it didn't take long for me to realize that not everything was as perfect as it seemed. I started hearing about people going missing in the neighborhood. It wasn't something you'd expect in a place like this. It was always the same story: someone vanished out of nowhere and nobody had a clue where they might be. That's when I started noticing some strange activity at a house nearby. It was the only house in the neighborhood that never had its lights on at night. What really caught my attention was that I kept seeing people who were supposedly missing either coming or going from that house. It made me feel really uneasy. It was like something very wrong was happening there and I was witnessing it. I decided to check it out. I'd peek through my window and see that nothing much was going on during the day. But at night, things changed. There were flashing lights and the sound of cars parking outside. It was not normal for such a quiet neighborhood. I began to wonder if there was a connection between these disappearances and what I was seeing. I couldn't just ignore it. One night, curiosity got the better of me and I decided to go over there. I walked up to the house with my heart racing. It was an eerily quiet place, with a sense of desolation hanging in the air. I got to the gate and started hearing whispers and footsteps inside. The door was slightly ajar and I could see a little of what was happening inside. I could make out some shadows and hear low conversations. I had no idea what was going on, but everything seemed off. Fear and curiosity mixed together, and I knew I had to get out of there before someone saw me. I went back home with a heavy feeling in my chest, not really knowing what I had witnessed but sure that something was very, very wrong with that house.
I'm Mark, and I own a 24-hour convenience store, a place where the nights are usually pretty quiet. Typically, things are pretty monotonous, and the biggest worry is dealing with customers who don't have change or someone deciding to use the bathroom when they shouldn't. But one night, everything changed. It was one of those ordinary, boring nights when a strange customer walked into the store. He was a guy who looked kind of worn out, wearing a coat that was way too big for the weather. It was like he was trying to hide from something. I noticed he seemed a bit disoriented and was more interested in looking around than in anything on the shelves. He grabbed a bag of chips and a drink and headed to the register. Right away, his behavior gave me the creeps, but I didn't think much of it. After paying, he left without saying a word. It was odd, but nothing to really worry about at that point. The problem started when he came back, and came back, and came back again. It was like he was doing laps around my store, always buying the same thing and never lingering. The weird customer kept showing up more and more frequently. Things got even stranger when he started getting more aggressive, like throwing threatening looks and asking bizarre questions. One time, he even banged on the counter like he was waiting for something or someone. I was getting really uncomfortable. Then, one of those nights, another guy showed up, and he was even scarier than the first one. He walked into the store with this menacing presence and started looking around like he was searching for something. Soon, the two of them started interacting. The atmosphere in the store turned heavy, and I could feel that something terrible was about to happen. I stayed behind the counter, trying to act normal, but the fear was palpable. I was about to call the cops when a more threatening guy started approaching the first customer. It looked like he was toying with him, enjoying the fear he was causing. Then, in a brutal and swift move, he pulled out a knife and attacked the other customer. The stabbings were quick and multiple, and it all happened right in front of me. What I saw was a total nightmare. I was paralyzed, watching the horrible scene unfold before me. The guy with the knife didn't seem to care about what he was doing and kept attacking the customer, who was now on the floor, trying to protect himself. The sound of the blows and the muffled screams of pain filled the store. Blood was everywhere, and I knew I needed to get out, but my legs wouldn't move. When I finally managed to move, I ran out of the store and called the police. However, time seemed to drag on, and the worst part was that the killer had disappeared before help arrived. When the police got there, they found the crime scene, but the attacker was already gone. The store was in chaos, and the trauma was indescribable. Now, the store is a constant reminder of that bloody night. Subscribe if you like our channel,